If you ask today's moviegoers to name the greatest films of all time, you'd expect them to come up with a list which would include modern hits like Star Wars, The Godfather and Schindler's List, alongside perennial old favourites like Casablanca and It's a Wonderful Life, and of course Citizen Kane. What you might not expect is that snuggled in amidst those accepted gems, there's a very strong likelihood that you'd also find a low-key, old-fashioned, prison-bound melodrama which failed to set the world alight when it first opened in the mid-90s, which garnered only muted critical applause despite an impressive array of Oscar nominations, and which only really found its true worldwide audience thanks to the miracle of home video. It's a film which topped the Internet Movie Database poll of the 250 greatest movies ever made, which was voted by the readers of Empire magazine as better than Apocalypse Now or Battleship Potemkin, and which has been hailed by everyone from the youthful listeners of Radio 1 to the middle-aged miseries of the British monarchy and the Joe Schmo church-going congregation of the American public as a reason to keep going back to the video store. So tonight, we attempt to answer a question which has baffled critics and academics, but to which the public seem instinctively to know the answer. Just what the hell is so great about the Shawshank Redemption?
A lot of people, more than any other movie I've done, have come up to me about that movie. And it's not just, hey, I like that movie, you were really good in that movie. It's, that movie was important to me, or that's my favorite movie of all time.
It is the greatest movie I have ever seen. I watch the movie every week, and I can't help but cry every time I see them on the beach.
The ending brings a tear to my eye. And I'm 17, so as you can
I have to see the movie
imagine.
at least once or twice a week. If I don't see it, I feel miserable. It just
I'm a
isn't
captain
hope.
for Delta Airlines, and indeed a grown man. However, this movie brought me to tears.
Everywhere I go, people who have seen it react to it fondly.
This movie helped me in my bleakest
I watched the first 2 hours of that film saying to myself, I will never see anything better than this
My
in my whole
absolute favorite
life.
moment, when he raises his face and
Hear a
feels the
pin drop
sweet
in the
taste
cinema.
of it.
Everyone was spellbound.
I've gotten mail, and I still get mail from people who say, gosh, your movie got me through a really bad marriage, or a really bad divorce, or it got me through a really bad patch in my life, or it got me through a really bad illness, or it helped me hang on when a loved one died. You know, there's something about the movie that helps lend some courage to people who need it.
I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living, or get busy dying.
The Shawshank Redemption began life as a novella by horror guru Stephen King, published in the 1982 anthology Different Seasons, which also included The Body, filmed by Rob Reiner as Stand By Me. Originally entitled Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, the story was a departure from scary fare like The Shining, which had made King a household name, offering instead of shivers and shocks, a fairy tale of incarceration and emancipation, in which an abused prisoner triumphs over terrible adversity by escaping into dreams of the movies, both literally and metaphorically. Describing himself as in rather than of the movie business ever since Carrie had hit the big screen in the 70s, King had famously decided that whilst Hollywood moguls could pay top whack for his novels, he would option his shorter stories to budding film students for a mere $1 on the condition that they weren't screened commercially and he retained the rights. And one student who took him up on that offer was Frank Darabont, whose adaptation of The Woman in the Room so impressed King that he reacted very enthusiastically when Darabont came back to him a few years later, looking to put together a feature deal on that quirky Rita Hayworth story.
I do recall very clearly, once upon a time, 2:30 in the morning, North Hollywood, Frank and I are in some supermarket, you know, looking at potted meat product or something, and he is considering the task of having to direct his first feature film, which was almost a Chucky film. And we're wandering up and down the aisles of the supermarket, and he's going, I don't know, do you think I should take this? You think I'll get another chance? Should I just grab this now? Should I do it? And I said, well, what else have you got on? And he said, well, I've almost finished up this adaptation of this novella by Stephen King, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. A more magnificently clunky title could not be imagined. And he said, I'm going to see if anybody's interested in buying it.
If I didn't care.
I think the ambition, the aspiration to direct was really something that I was born with. Making films since childhood seemed like a glorious thing to me. That's indeed where I drew a great deal of my inspiration growing up, was from the films that I saw. I love Capra. I grew up with Capra, and I grew up with Norman Rockwell. There's a part of me that is completely captivated by those kinds of storytellers who would tell those kinds of tall tales. Some of the best tall tales I've ever heard came out of Frank Capra. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is nothing if not a tall tale. It's a Wonderful Life is an even taller tale. So you have Shawshank Redemption, which I've described really not as a prison movie, but as a sort of tall tale.
Andy came to Shawshank Prison in early 1947 for murdering his wife and the fella she was banging. On the outside, he'd been vice president of a large Portland bank. Good work for a man as young as he was.
I can see exactly why it appeals as widely as it does. A lot of it has to do with Stephen King. Whatever his problems as a prose stylist, and there aren't that many to be honest, he is a born storyteller who knows how to satisfy an audience. For some reason, that has not always worked with his movies. There are some terrible movies out there. There are some great ones like Pet Sematary and The Shining. This one is probably the purest expression of Stephen King, and that has a lot to do with it. A Stephen King book is a bestseller months before it's even published.
One thing Stephen King has always needed, insofar as the translation from the written word to movies, is an adapter that is up to the task of not losing the thing that makes King's fiction essential to so many readers. And I think he found that person, principally in Frank, because Frank is such a faithful adapter of these things. He really holds the written word in high regard.
If I didn't care.
In his introduction to Darabont's published Shawshank Redemption screenplay, Stephen King would later say that it was the kind of script that nobody could reasonably expect to be allowed to film, heavy on unfashionable substance and full of hoary old cinematic cliches which really shouldn't have worked. Nevertheless, by the time pre-production began in January 1993, everyone, King included, thought they had a script that really would deliver that rarest of commodities, hope.
Castle Rock was the first place we sent the script, and the only place we sent the script. I'd had enough experience at other studios as a writer to know how damaged this material might get. Their company actually was founded upon the success of Stand By Me, directed by Rob Reiner, and that was very delicate material that they captured perfectly.
When I read the script, I remember I got to about page 80 or 90, and I couldn't finish it because I loved it so much. I loved these people, and I was so worried it wouldn't pay off or it wouldn't be satisfying. And I remember I had it all weekend, and I didn't want to know if it didn't turn out okay.
What happened was the script got Xeroxed and went around every actor in Hollywood, and we got besieged. And that took it to a whole other level. He and I were getting calls from people, at our homes, on cell phones, it was very bizarre. It took on a life of its own.
There were stars who were interested in it. Tom Cruise was interested in it. Nicolas Cage was interested in it. Charlie Sheen. I mean, it's like Frank had written something that was powerful and well crafted, and as soon as that hit the water, fish were moving in, right?
There must be a con like me in every prison in America. I'm the guy who can get it for you. Cigarettes, a bag of reefer, if that's your thing, a bottle of brandy to celebrate your kid's high school graduation, damn near anything within reason.
You read a script and you have a certain kind of reaction to the script. Powerful reaction in the case of the Shawshank Redemption. From reading the script, it's like, yeah, I really, really, really would like to do this.
The character was written by Steve King, was actually a white Irish guy, so I'd known the story for years as with Red as a white Irish guy in my head. When we were casting about, somebody suggested Morgan Freeman. And once I got over my preconception of what the character was, which was drawn from Steve King, it became such a good choice. And indeed, I think he's become indelible in the role to the point where I don't think people could imagine anybody else really doing it.
Name's Red.
Red. Why do they call you that?
Maybe it's because I'm Irish.
Tim, we came to because of, we looked at about 4 or 5 of his films, one of which was Jacob's Ladder, and we really thought this guy can do it. You know, he was very enigmatic, and Andy needed to have that.
He strolled like a man in a park without a care or a worry in the world. Like he had on an invisible coat that would shield him from this place.
I think it was a sort of a love relationship between Red and Andy. It was, it did go deeper than just friendship. But you know, these things, you develop these kinds of relationships in life and death situations.
Here. Little parole rejection present. Go ahead and open it. I had to go through one of your competitors. I hope you don't mind. I wanted it to be a surprise.
How many working class construction worker kind of guys have come up to me on the street and said, "That Shawshank Redemption, man, that's a great film." Because I think especially American males, we don't get that model in films, that there is a real chance to have an emotional bond with another man that is a significant and important part of your life.
We sat and drank with the sun on our shoulders and felt like free men. Hell, we could have been tarring the roof of one of our own houses. We were the lords of all creation. As for Andy, he spent that break hunkered in the shade, a strange little smile on his face, watching us drink his beer.
I love good character actors. They're the unsung heroes of movies. And I grew up seeing so many films and loving so many of these wonderful faces and presences. Yes, the stars of the film are important, but the supporting cast is equally so.
One of the very cool things that Frank does, I mean, you watch his films and it doesn't matter which other character in the scene you watch. There's a life, there's a history and an involvement. There's something going on. You would look at the dinner table scenes in Shawshank and it doesn't matter where you aim the camera. Everybody is playing that game.
In the novella itself, there are actually 3 wardens. And I think that part of the genius of Frank's script is that he collapsed those 3 wardens into one individual. And I think it really gives the screenplay more of a kind of mythic quality to it.
Our inmates, properly supervised, will be put to work outside these walls, performing all manner of public service.
Because King is a man of his period, of his generation. The worst villain of that generation is Nixon. And you get that with Bob Gunton in this, who is explicitly Nixonian.
Nothing stops. Nothing. Well, you will do the hardest time there is. No more protection from the guards. I'll pull you out of that one bunk Hilton and cast you down with the sodomites. You'll think you've been fucked by a train.
We're supposed to be icons. We're supposed to be the worst of the worst, and Andy is the best of the best. We personify whatever we need to personify.
What are you Jimmy staring at? Back to work! Let's go, work!
It's the Joseph Campbell mythic hero who rides into town. The stranger rides out of the desert, cleans up the town, and rides away. Sets things right, you know. Well, that's what Andy does in Stephen King's story. Not just changes the environment, but also fundamentally changes his friend, Red, by their friendship.
It would make me sound smarter if I said that we, analyzed it and we were afraid, because we should have probably, but I think that the emotion we all felt for the script kind of overwhelmed it.
Imagine reading a plot synopsis of this, because a plot synopsis of the movie would be terrible. It would just be 2 people in prison in the 40s, and what happens to them. because you can't really summarise up the feeling of hope that you get from watching the film.
We did all say to ourselves, the only way this movie is going to find an audience is if it's unbelievably well executed. And if it's medium, we're sunk.
Shawshank is without the slightest doubt my favorite movie of all time. I can watch it over and over and never tire.
Hope truly springs eternal.
I think it's a wonderful life for our generation.
Although The Shawshank Redemption was set, like so much of Stephen King's writing, in the heavenly surroundings of Maine, New England, Frank Darabont and his crew would set up shop here at the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, which, along with some imposing cell block sets by designer Terrence Marsh, would form an awe-inspiring backdrop for the drama. Opening its doors to young offenders in the late 19th century, this looming landmark was in the prison business for nearly 100 years, incarcerating its inmates in an environment which was 1 part cathedral to 2 parts Castle of Frankenstein, the perfect setting, in fact, for a tale of spiritual salvation based on a text by a master of horror. As Warden Samuel Norton says, I believe in 2 things.
Discipline and the Bible. Here you'll receive both. Put your trust in the Lord. Your ass belongs to me. Welcome to Shawshank. If you had a scene in that prison, you felt in your pores the weight of that place, and it was like a character looming in every scene.
We had this kind of tour so you could see it fully, even the condemned parts of the prison we went into and looked at these really tiny little cages that they kept those men in there. And I always have a visceral reaction to being inside a real prison. When I hear the door close behind me, I have this twinge of realization that they could decide not to open it again, you know.
I remember walking into this cell block with my son, who was about 3 or 4 at the time, and he said, "Daddy, I don't want to be here." I said, "Why not?" He says, "This is a really sad place." And he could feel just this incredible weight of many years of pain and suffering that had gone on in this place. And it was palpable. You could really sense it.
Prisoners, return to your cell blocks.
The architect, his name was Levi Schofield, and he had traveled extensively in Europe. He was from the Cleveland area, north of here. And it is kind of an odd mixture of architectural styles. It's not something that happens very often. It's Richardsonian Romanesque and Chateauesque, and then there's also the Gothic overtones on the interior, all of which are to remind a person of the religious backgrounds, religious overtones, which was all part of the whole idea of a reformatory.
So the building is specifically designed to sort of, you know, to
draw your eyes
to the heavens.
To draw your eyes skyward. That was why we were the logical place to film it too. There are no other architectural styles exactly like this mixture. And it might have just been all things put together, that it was a great film, it had great actors, but they had a great place that they could film it too.
It had a theatrical quality, which I loved, because, I mean, to accent anything, you've got to go with the top a little bit. And the Gothic quality was what attracted me.
This room is actually called the bullpen. This is one room that inmates did pass through on a daily basis, but this is also a room that had a lot of exposure in the movie. If you look here along the floor, you can see what's left of a yellow line that runs across here.
Yeah.
That is where early in the film, when Andy and the new fish all arrive at the prison, they line up together and they're shackled, and the warden comes to talk to them about what to expect in his prison. The warden is standing right out there in the middle of the room.
Unhook him.
I was here in 1987. I had been stealing to supply my drug habit. And very similar to the fresh fish scene where Red said, the worst night is the first night. It truly was here.
I remember my first night. Seems like a long time ago.
Where we're at now, this was the second floor, and below us was where at that time they had kept some of the prisoners in solitary confinement or those who needed extra restrictions. And they would try to figure out who you were by your cell number or if they could find your name.
chaos is a good way to describe it. It was a bustling place when it was operational. Live with inmates, live with voices, yelling, screaming.
When we went down them steps, the first floor, and we start going by these guys that say they want to fuck you, rape you, you're going to be my bitch in a cell, it's only going to cost me a carton of TMs, this and that. I looked up at the Lord, I said, I know the ways you raised me, Lord, but if anybody ever puts their hands on me, I says, I don't care what it takes, I'm going to kill them.
Hey, fat ass. Talk to me, boy. While you're there, I can hear you breathing.
Now, I was 6'4", weighed 190 pounds. That's the scaredest I've ever been in my life. And I've been a lot of places because the stuff these guys yell and what they want to do to you, it's beyond belief.
Tell you what, I'll introduce you around, make you feel right at home. I know a couple of big old bull queers that just love to make your acquaintance, especially that big white mushy butt of yours.
They would call out your name, and very early on they begin screaming things such as, you gotta kill yourself and get it over with. You're not gonna make it. You can kill yourself and get it over with now. And within a few hours, they started chanting, kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself. And it was as if the entire 6 floors on this side, every cell, was chanting, kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself.
Where's Fish? Where's Fish? Where's Fish? I don't want Fish. I want to go home.
I took a tour through there and the people said, how was it in here? What was it really like? I said, I'll answer it to you in one word. They all looked at me. I said, it was fucked. Because a lot of people would take that word, oh, a nasty word and everything. But that one word encompasses everything that could have happened in there.
I think coming here sometimes sets my compass to let me know where I've been, where I'm at now. And I often, when I think about this place, I'm very grateful.
If I hear so much as a mouse fart in here the rest of the night, I swear by God and Sonny Jesus, you will all visit the infirmary.
They had a liaison officer who actually came to me at one point and said, do you want to sit down and talk to any of these guards? And I said, listen, I don't know if you've read this script, but the last thing you want me to do is say that I base this on the Ohio State correctional officers, because I'm an awful, awful person.
I asked to be put in solitary confinement for a while and see what that felt like. And, of course, mine was just a sensorial experience. It wasn't really a truly life-altering, I'm not going to tell you anything tremendously significant happened in there because I always knew I was going to get out. But it gave me the opportunity to listen to what the sounds are and to get a feeling of what it must be like to live for this one little square of the outside, that's your life.
Mansfield was completely trashed when we moved in there. It had been decommissioned, I think, 2 years before, and I think every ex-con had come back and smashed something.
When the movie was made, the prison had been closed for a couple years. Actually, the making of the movie postponed a date with the Wrecking Ball.
Mansfield's a relatively small town. We don't have Hollywood here very often. They came into town. They were here for several months. They lived here. They became part of the community. The actors, the crew. You had a chance to actually watch them filming because they would go downtown and film in the square and film along Main Street.
Everybody around town was excited about possibly being in the movie and possibly launching a career in Hollywood. So aspirations of being a movie star were abuzz all throughout Mansfield, Ohio.
Some call it a casting call, while others refer to it as a cattle call.
The latter name may be more appropriate for Wednesday's audition for Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption.
I mentioned to the crew that I would like to have a little part, and they said, well, sure, what would you like to do? I said, well, I'd like to play an inmate. So they finally came with the idea. I was an inmate, but I wasn't in prison garb.
The casting call was scheduled from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., but due to the overwhelming turnout, no more names were taken after 3.
Hey, I think I got it already, man. just look at us. That's the way we act. It's just regular acting, man.
Reporting for WMFD, I'm Laurie Carto.
Now, also here, there are two very conspicuous large tubes. What are these?
Those are the actual escape tunnels that were used for Shawshank Redemption.
So this is the...
This is the one that Andy crawled through to freedom.
This is the sewage pipe.
Correct.
Andy crawled to freedom through 500 yards of shit-smelling foulness I can't even imagine. Or maybe I just don't want to.
The pipe was constructed into the hillside near the prison. It was right by a little creek. Now, the creek is, I don't know what that creek was, you know. That was the scary part.
We got a local, I don't know what he was, chemist, to come along and test the quality of the water. And he said, this water's absolutely lethal. He said, no one should go into this water. And the construction coordinator said, should we tell anyone on the crew this? I said, this is a fantastic location and it's perfect for us. I don't know where we're going to find anything else. And I mean, I don't know whether we should go on film saying this. Poor Timmy, think, my God, I could have got typhoid or something.
It's a farming community, so you have to be careful in creeks and farming communities because they could be just filled with, you know, cow urine and feces of another kind.
Having duly served his time at Mansfield Reformatory throughout '93, Frank Darabont found himself in '94 taking his case to be judged by the jury of a preview audience who would decide whether or not The Shawshank Redemption was ready to be allowed out into the world. According to legend, their decision was both unanimous and vocal. Shawshank was indeed ready for immediate release, particularly since it now included a feel-good finale not present in Darabont's original screenplay, which transformed the open-endedly hopeful ending of King's novella into the kind of conclusively celebratory closing shot beloved of movie audiences, but despised by purist critics.
In post, they argued for a very long time over the ending to the story. If you were to end the movie where the story ends, you would end it on the shot of the bus going away with Morgan Freeman, Red, in it, in search of Andy.
A free man at the start of a long journey, whose conclusion is uncertain.
To me, that was the perfect ending for that story. And indeed, in a sense, by extension, the perfect ending for the movie. So that's the way I wrote it.
I hope I can make it across the border. I hope to see my friend and shake his hand. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams. I hope.
It ended on a note of hope, but not fulfillment. And when we met with Castle Rock, they said, you can't do this. You can't have these guys talking about getting back together. It's kind of like a love affair, and not have them reunited. You're cheating the audience of this.
That would have been me. Frank thought, he'll tell you, but that it would be pandering to an audience somehow, that it was like the Holly, you know, because it came from me and I worked for the studio, it was automatically like, well, that's the, you know, the glossy Hollywood ending.
I shot this little ending on the beach, where you actually do see them get together. And I thought, you know, after 2 hours and 20 minutes of hell that these guys have crawled through, this huge sort of emotional experience we've taken the audience on, we may owe them the catharsis of seeing these men rejoined.
He was suspicious about us. You know, we were the suits. And we said to him, basically, you have final cut. although it's not an illegal document, we give you final cut. We won't make you do anything you don't want to do. And I think that allowed him to feel free to try things. He could shoot it and know we weren't going to force him to put it in the movie, and that's why we did that. And of course, I think he knew right away when he shot it that he wanted to use it.
When they do get together in Mexico on the beach, I can understand that could go the wrong way. You could see them hugging, you could see them crying, you could see them talking together, you could see a terrible shot of them on their fishing boat, you know, reeling in fish or taking tourists around the bay or something. That would have been horrible. Actually, I think it's still kept very downbeat. The main thing when I see that ending always strikes me is that Morgan Freeman smiles. And it's not just a small smile, it's a really big, toothy smile. To see him in that position, you know, sleeves rolled up, just looking really relaxed, smiling, is such a shock, because he's never been like that. Even when he was released from prison, he was still depressed. And to see him happy, that for me is the major moment in that ending.
It had many of the trappings of a real Hollywood premiere, including Klieg lights and limousines. The film's director-screenwriter, Frank Darabont, and producer Nicky Marvin were welcomed with a standing ovation and the keys to the city.
They didn't give the final thing of how it ended, didn't give that away until just the very end, which I thought they would, which is really great. So it kept it really spellbinding.
I think it was beautifully done. It was very artistic.
Lord, I love to hear her when she called me sweet Daddy, such a beautiful dream.
Despite the positive preview screenings, The Shawshank Redemption would have as hard a time out there in the real world as Red or Brooks, with audiences proving themselves unwilling to embrace the idea of a 2.5-hour prison movie. In its initial release period, Shawshank recouped only 18 of its $25 million investment. This at a time, remember, when hits took 100 million or more. Not even 7 Oscar nominations could put it up there with the success of Pulp Fiction, Speed, or of course Forrest Gump. But gradually, as time passed, those blockbusters would come to be overshadowed by the growing reputation of The Shawshank Redemption, which seems to have died only to rise again as the unlikely saviour of 90s cinema.
Ever since Jaws came out, the high concept movie, the 80s sci-fi movies, the action adventures, the special effects, we've become used to that. We've become used to those being the movies that everybody talks about, that everybody goes to see, especially over the summer. This doesn't have any of those things.
Audiences absolutely thought that this was going to be a very bleak experience, that it was a prison movie.
No one knows what a Shawshank is. And redemption sounds religious, so it's, who's gonna come and see that?
I've had, Shawshank Reduction and what is that, Scrimshaw thing you did? And
and then you hear it's a prison movie. It's like, oh, yeah, great. So, 8 security guards are going to go see this film.
We thought we were robbed, and we thought, why, this should get all this attention. And it was sort of slipping by. The Golden Globes came, and it didn't get the 25 nominations we thought it deserved, and we couldn't believe it. And that's why when the Oscars were announced that year, was just a great victory for Frank and for the movie.
When you're up there with these other films as Best Picture, and we got nominated for 7 Academy Awards, didn't win a single one, but the 7 nominations kind of sent a message to people.
And people were running to the video store and renting it. And every time I checked, the video stores were saying, we're out of copies. People are renting them like crazy. So that's what saved us.
When someone sees that movie, they feel like they have to make someone else go see it. And they feel compelled to, sell it to their friends. And that's how it's really taken on its own life.
Despite having technically flopped in its initial theatrical opening in '94, The Shawshank Redemption gradually started to shape up as one of the most popular movies ever, topping internet polls by America Online and the Internet Movie Database, being voted best film of the 90s and 4th best film of all time by the readers of Empire magazine, and making a top 5 showing in a national poll of Radio 1 listeners. And what's interesting is that most of the people who really loved the film saw it not in the cinema, but at home, either on television, where it became a regular audience winner, or on video, with Shawshank Redemption being named top renting tape of '95 and remaining a solidly saleable item to this day.
It is the only movie that I can watch repeatedly. I've been known to watch the entire movie intently 2 or 3 times.
that the greatness of this film is finally coming into public consciousness.
In so many ways that it would take me days to explain. It was on TV, and little did I know that I was about to have a
Whenever I
totally
need a lift,
different
I
outlook
watch
on
The
life.
Shawshank Redemption, knowing that it's going to lift me up.
Our audience is 15 to 24. It's a young audience. You don't think that they're going to like this film because it's not aimed at them. It's not sold as a teenager movie. But it's incredibly popular.
The film amazingly did 320,000 units on video rental in the US, which is kind of out of whack with the box office result.
We were the most rented videotape of 1995. I mean, more than any other film.
Each month we get constant reorders, which means that it's going to go on for a long time as people discover this picture.
It's the part I really like is when she does that shit with her hair.
Oh, yeah, I know. I've seen it 3 times this month.
Gilda, are you decent?
Me?
The Internet Movie Database has provided me with some sort of legitimacy, I guess, because the people who log on to this get to vote for their all-time favorite movies. And there have been times, I don't know, out of a list of 250 movies when we've been in the top spot of people's all-time favorite films. It blows my mind.
The Internet Movie Database poll's been running for 11 years now. During that time, we've accumulated over 10.5 million votes from nearly 1 million film fans worldwide. Shawshank's currently #2 in the poll.
Sometimes we swap places with The Godfather or Star Wars or, you know, my God, I'm looking at this list of, I don't think we've ever really been less than 5th place on this list of movies.
It's not the kind of poll where whatever's #1 at the box office can shoot right in there and become #1. To some extent, it's already stood 7 years of historical voting and is still there up at #2 with, you know, no sign of anything really coming close to it.
You see movies that were unsuccessful in their initial releases that have become some of the top movies of all time. 2 of them in particular, Citizen Kane, It's a Wonderful Life, were both bombs when they came out. And for some reason, they became, over the years, more and more renowned.
However impressive the home viewing figures for The Shawshank Redemption may be, they don't really reflect the profound impact that the film seems to have had on some viewers. Like all truly great films, Shawshank has become much more than a movie for those who see it as a modern allegory for personal and spiritual salvation. And whether you understand it or not, the fact is it gets inside an extraordinarily wide range of viewers, from teenage punters to reformed prisoners to devout churchgoers, all of whom see it as casting a beacon of light in an often dark world.
I think what Hollywood movies do, and stories in general, they give us a facility to experience and express that which we oftentimes shy away from. And for that reason, I think that movies can be a very profoundly spiritual experience. Hollywood Jesus reviews movies from a spiritual point of view rather than doing what so many others, well, every other reviewer does, you know, how well the director did or how good of a story it was or who did the best acting job. Instead of doing that, it looks more for the inner thing that happens with people when they watch a film, and it dialogues about that.
Pleased to see you reading this. Any favorite passages?
Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh.
Mark 13:35. Always like that one.
I didn't see Shawshank when it came out. I think my story is pretty much like everybody else's. Someone told me about it. And I thought, wow, what an interesting title. Shawshank Redemption. Sounds actually like something I might be interested in. I went down and I rented it, and I could not believe what I was watching.
I'm the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life.
John chapter 8, verse 12.
I think the main thing that it does show is that our generation today, particularly younger people who are listening to modern music and watching modern films, have this desire that there is something more than what they're in right now. They have, I guess you'd call it the postmodern idea that the things around us and the material things that we gain are not the only thing there is in life, and that there has to be hope. There has to be something better than what we're in right now, or else life is not worth living.
I got one letter from a kid who dropped out of college and was just didn't see any reason to live and was actually, you know, thinking of committing suicide, and saw the movie and decided not to. Saw the movie and decided to go and embrace life and see where life could take him. Wow, that's stunning.
I've met people who've seen that thing 30 times, but they were going through profound changes in their life, and it helped them work through it. Film is therapy. Shawshank Redemption gives you hope. You can go on. You can go forward. That's what I think is going on. What do you think of Andy as a Christ character?
I love the part where Andy was telling Rhett about Zihuatanejo, and that it was a place where they had their memories, they would not have memories. It would all be, wasn't it like the ocean? Or
ocean has no memory.
The ocean has no memory. And you know, that's like when we come to Christ, you know, our sins are forgiven. Christ does not remember. God does not remember our sins.
That's where I want to live the rest of my life. A warm place with no memory.
Red was attracted to him, just the way Christ woos us to himself. There was something about Andy that caught Red's spirit.
Zihuatanejo. In a place like that, I could use a man that knows how to get things.
Did anybody see New Birth in the Shawshank?
Burl and I were talking about that. Yeah, the scene in where he's going through the sewage pipe as he's breaking out, and he's going through this just long scene of treading through this sewage, and then they have a scene where he breaks through the sewage and he plunges into the river there, and it's kind of like not only a baptism but a new birth type of experience. And when he came out of that, his hands were lifted up, and it was like that sense of great freedom that he had broke through.
It's like Andy never saw the walls because he had hope, and it's the same for us if we put our hope in Christ. The walls that are around us, we don't even need to see them. We can be far beyond them.
So they let you tote that record player down there, huh?
It was in here. In here. That's the beauty of music. They can't get that from you.
We all come under the spell of Andy. None of these people are the same afterwards. Yeah. There's a great moment when Red talks about how hope is a dangerous thing, and Andy won't buy that.
You need it so you don't forget.
Forget?
Yeah, forget that there are places in the world that aren't made out of stone, that there's something inside that they can't get to, that they can't touch. It's yours.
What are you talking about?
When he played that music, the opera, I loved that scene. You know, and all those men, you know, in their prison walls, and all of them saying, you know, we're in here because of somebody else, and everyone in here is innocent. He sacrificed, I think, a month in the hole or something to give them that, you know, that moment of transcendence, and lifted them up beyond the walls.
All of this distilled, this whole arc can be seen in that one sequence in Shawshank when he plays the record for everybody in the prison. It changes the environment. It puts a completely new tone into things.
Andy has done so much to make himself known to the guards, for the guards to like him, for the warden to like him. And basically he throws it all away just for this record, just to play it, just to listen to it, just to play it to everyone else, just to get that sense for a few moments you are free and you're soaring.
it's poetry, and it's stayed poetry through all of the travails that these stories have to go through, from the time it's the novella to the time it's on screen.
That's one of the high points. That one and Driving Miss Daisy, of course. But Shawshank Redemption always gets the top spot.
A lot of people are in prisons of relationships, of jobs that they hate, of lives unfulfilled, and have given up hope. And what this movie was saying to them was, it might take a while, it might take some time, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and if you have the patience and the belief, you can make it there.
You can transpose that story into, you know, the kid that's having trouble in school, or a marriage that's on the rocks, or, you know, relationships, or careers.
It allows people to see that they can get out of the prisons they've created for themselves.
I'm warning you, Dufresne, turn that off!
When Michael Curtiz's Casablanca first premiered in the early 40s, it was pretty much universally dismissed by the critics as pappy mass entertainment, at best sentimental, at worst howlingly indulgent. A few years later, Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life was memorably trashed by the film critic of the New York Times, who said it was stuffed with platitudes so mincing as to border on baby talk. Spool forward 30 years and you'll find Star Wars being dealt some pretty rough justice by those who wrote it off as simply camp, tacky nonsense. Fast forward again to the 90s and there's the Shawshank Redemption, quietly winning the hearts and minds of viewers while leaving some cynical critics scratching their heads and shrugging their shoulders. Whether the Shawshank Redemption will continue to age as well as its immortal feel-good predecessors, only time will tell. But one thing's for sure. For movies in general, and The Shawshank Redemption in particular, in the end, the audience's verdict is final.